could you please introduce yourself and what you do?
I certainly can, yeah. So my name's Mark Little. By trade, I'm a marketing guy, so I'm a marketing director. I've got a long corporate background in working for blue chip companies, and a couple of years ago I got into startup. So I'm a co-founder of Pynk, Pynk, so you can find us at pynk.io, and my role is CMO, so I lead on all the marketing and I'm heavily involved with the product as well, so that's me.
Amazing, thank you.
Nice to meet you.
So what questions should a startup ask their investors?
So I think a startup should be looking to investors for advice as much as possible. Investors are in a unique position in that they see a lot of startups and pitches week in, week out, and that gives them a sort of breadth of experience that sometimes a startup doesn't always get because they're very focused on what they're doing. Mm-hmm. So, the question to investors should be, how can you help? How can you give us advice and insight? And great investors do that. Some investors, are more challenging and can think they're adding value and sometimes aren't, but the really great investors are adding value every week and every month. So actually at Pynk, we really look forward to our monthly update calls with investors because, more often than not, it's a really collaborative discussion. We get a lot from them. So that's how I think the relationship should be.
Yeah, amazing. So what makes a good investor? You kind of answered a lot there already, but is there anything else you'd like to add?
Lots of money.
Yeah, always useful.
No, obviously it's more than that, as we've talked about already. It's about the value that they can bring. And I think as a startup, you should be looking for an investor that has a portfolio of similar investments. So for us, we're in fintech. Clearly, as we're midway through our CB round, we're looking for a lead investor, and we're looking for VCs that have other fintechs in their portfolio. And already, some of our prospective investors are introducing us to other fintech founding teams, and it's those kind of connections and networks that really open up a lot of doors, and you learn from those conversations every time you have them. Mm-hmm. And the other thing that for us as a fintech is really important is about developing B2B relationships, and that helps us scale. So often, these investor networking events, and today we're here at the Expanse event, you meet these kind of people that introduce you to, these B2B opportunities. So the network is crucial, especially in a place like London, which is Europe's centre of fintech. You've got to go out there and make the most of it. It's kind of crucial.
Amazing, thank you. And which is the best degree, do you think, to have as an entrepreneur?
I'm not a big believer in degrees personally. We interview a lot of MBA, people with MBA qualification, and I have business degrees, as do my co-founders. But for me, what's much more important is experience and what you bring to the table. Experience number one, and then number two is passion. And it's a bit of a cliche, but we've tried to bring in first employees and agencies that we work with, and I'm talking on the marketing side and the product side and the B2B sales side, and it's very hit or miss. Some of those people have added so much value, and it's because of that unique combination of experience and passion, and then other people that we've worked with just haven't been able to add value in the same way, and we're quick to walk away from those kind of partners, and we really put a lot of emphasis on working with the people that add the most possible value, because when you're an early stage startup, every penny counts, and in the same way, time is very valuable, so we can't lose any time. We've got to make that rapid progress to take the company to the next level, deliver on our KPIs consistently. So you've got to be quick to walk away, but then you've got to find, when you do find a partner that you can work with, and whether that be an agency or whether it be an employee or whether that be a fellow co-founder, you hold on to them, you keep them close, and you want to build a long-term relationship, and the same goes for investors as well. So it's all about longevity of relationship, we think. So yeah.
Amazing, thank you. Okay. So we're going to move on to a couple of Bitcoin-based questions.
Oh,
now.
Great! My favourite topic. I love Bitcoin.
Was that sarcasm?
No, I do. I really do. I really do. Yeah.
So, will the role of traditional financial institutions decline because of cryptocurrencies?
Okay, so I think it's a difficult question to answer because I honestly think that the space is in a moment of flux, and so I don't think the role of traditional financial institutions is going to decline necessarily, but the rate of adoption of cryptocurrencies, I think, is currently unknown. I think what's happening is post 2017 and the ICO hype has kind of fallen away massively, and rightly so, because there's a lot of bad actors in that space, and I think a lot of retail investors got hurt by that. So it was an inevitable consequence. But what you're seeing now with cryptocurrencies is enterprise solutions in the B2C space anyway, and namely, obviously, Facebook have come to market and launched or announced Libra, and they're trying to launch it. And they've taken, some of the best qualities of, the early blockchain cryptocurrencies, and taken that for their own benefit, which is, again, fairly predictable. So when you get a new technology come in, it's always the enterprises that look to adopt those technologies to drive efficiencies through their P&L and create new business models. And, one of the early cryptocurrencies that's been adopted by enterprises would be Ripple, and so financial institutions are using Ripple and are starting to becoming more mainstream. So that's real adoption and use case of blockchain technology, which is fantastic. What's the role of financial institutions within that? I think it's inevitable that financial institutions are going to lead the way on cryptocurrencies. It's very difficult for, as we've seen with all of the altcoins, for them to have longevity because adoption and with real use cases is proving to be a hard thing for many blockchain startups, as we're seeing. So the hype's dying off a bit at the moment, but I think the real players will be there for the longer run. And I see that as the way that it's panning out. But I'm a big believer in Bitcoin, because that's something entirely different from altcoins, in that it's fully decentralized, or as much as a cryptocurrency can be. And I think that Bitcoin will be here to stay as kind of the first, and I think that will stay alongside of the enterprise adoption of crypto technology.
Amazing, thank you. So what do you think are the biggest problems facing Bitcoin?
Biggest problems facing Bitcoin, obviously volatility in the markets is still there, and the market's still quite thin, and that's because global adoption hasn't still got a long way to go. It's still a very early technology, and there's still only early adopters that are really kind of investing in Bitcoin. It hasn't become mainstream yet. So as more volume comes into it, the volatility will disappear a bit, which is which arguably is a good thing. I think one of the big problems, obviously, it's still based on proof of work and mining, and ownership of Bitcoin in terms of the mining aspect of it is dominated by the likes of Bitmain and the Chinese mining companies. And that probably goes against the original ethos of Bitcoin, which was about pure decentralization. So in that regard, it's not purely decentralized. There's a bit of centralization there. But on the encouraging side, I think there's a couple of really strong things around Bitcoin. So Backed has been launched, and that's going to help accelerate the use of Bitcoin. And there are scaling technologies coming to the fore as well, which will improve transaction speed. So there's lots of positive things there. But I think, if we take a step back and think about what Bitcoin is, it's an incredible thing. It's more than 10 years old now, and it's still in existence. And there's a lot of naysayers, but the fact is, it hasn't yet been hacked. There's the quantum computer discussion, but probably it's not going to be hacked. And that in itself is its value. And I think the other part of its value is the anonymity of the original founders. So obviously no one knows who Satoshi Nakamoto was, or the group of originators around Bitcoin, and that in itself is the beauty of Bitcoin, because that's why it remains decentralized, and that's its value, and that's why people see that it has this kind of this value. So yeah, the store of value element of Bitcoin is really a big thing as well. So yeah, I see Bitcoin as a beautiful thing. I think it's here to stay. Yeah, hopefully anyway.
What factors drive the price of Bitcoin?
Well, supply and demand.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah, but because the markets are still so thin and there's this volatility, obviously it's still driven a lot by, what's in the news. But I personally believe that there's a lot of insider stuff going on, and clearly there's whale manipulation. So in May, I think it was May, when Libra was about to be announced, somebody bought into Bitcoin in a large amount of volume and triggered a bit of a bull run, and that happened ahead of the announcement. Then the announcement happened, then there was a second run. So certainly whales are getting some information before the general public. and the everyday investor who's trying to speculate on Bitcoin is quite difficult because often they're last to know about the actual news and it's already priced in. That's not just the case with Bitcoin, that's the case with many financial asset classes. So actually in that regard it behaves quite similarly to traditional assets. But it's a challenge for everyday people and everyday traders and investors. So yeah.
Cryptocurrencies ready for mass adoption?
Are cryptocurrencies ready for mass adoption? I think, yes, they are, especially amongst a sort of younger investor and user of cryptocurrencies, the digital natives, so anyone under the age of 30. Actually, I always tell this story that I was at a bar a couple of months ago, and in front of me there was 3 guys, younger than me, I'd say they were 25, and all of them were on Coinbase, talking about the latest price of Ethereum and all of the altcoins. And it was a fascinating moment for me because it was a moment of, it is increasingly becoming more mainstream, and so mass adoption is there. Clearly, or starting to happen. Clearly, what needs to happen is regulation, and that's going to take some time. And I think the big regulators in the big jurisdictions are deliberately sitting on the fence, and that's the right thing for them to do because they're assessing it. And there'll come a point when they're ready to regulate fully, and that's when mass adoption will happen. I think there's 2 types of tokens. So there's the utility token, and then there's the security token. And for me, utility tokens, originally the promise of that was that obviously they had utility within the network, within that blockchain ecosystem, but there's not very many use cases at the moment for that, and because they've been overused for ICOs, and effectively they were nothing more than an IOU written on a post-it note, so they don't have any legal claim to that investment. But security tokens obviously are the next big trend, and that essentially just represents a digital derivative of any existing asset class. So people say that security tokens are asset-backed. And I think that's where adoption is going to take place in the next 5 to 10 years, as most asset classes will become tokenized. I think it's inevitable. And I think regulation on that side of things will probably happen arguably more quickly. So security tokens will be the next big thing.
How do you stay motivated after a bad business decision?
Good question. Wow. We made a bad business decision 3 or 4 months ago, as all startups do, and it was really frustrating for the team because we lost time, and we're all about going fast and getting the company to the next level. And in hindsight, we made a decision too quickly, and we didn't do the due diligence, and it was demotivating for us, for the team. But it's all about, if I can use the word, bounce back ability and resilience. I think entrepreneurs are tough. They have to be tough. Yeah. And everybody has those tough moments. And startup lives, it's kind of, oh my God. And then you get a rare moment of a sort of peak and a win, and you celebrate those. But most of the time you're fighting. So it's all about resilience. But when you do make a bad decision, the most important thing is to learn from it and not make the same decision again. And usually, I find it's not you're necessarily learning as an individual, you are, but almost you're learning as a team, because the way that the team dynamic makes decisions and the parties within that team is fundamental. So you need to make sure you're constantly paying attention to how the team is working and the team dynamic, and watch out for signs within the team as to when it's working, when it's not. And make sure you learn as a team from the bad decision you made, and that's how you bounce back, because next time you can make a better decision and take the company to the next level. So yeah.
What would be your advice to our young startups when things start getting tough?
Yeah, well, we are a young startup, so and it does get tough all of the time. Celebrate the wins, obviously. Don't just celebrate them with yourselves, but celebrate them within the wider team, and that includes external parties. You really got to champion those wins. But I think that resilience thing's a natural thing for entrepreneurs, and either they've got it or they haven't. And there is that motivational saying, when the going gets tough, the tough get going.
There you go.
And got one. Yeah, got there at the end. But it's not something that I think startup teams really have to think about it, because the startup teams are very driven. They're very passionate about what they're doing. That's why they spring out of bed in the morning. That's why they're doing it in the first place. That's why they've walked away from the cushy job. I think if you need advice as to how to have that resilience, then you're in the wrong business. It should be a natural thing.
Oh, amazing, thank you. So what would you say are your greatest business decisions?
In general terms, I think our best business decisions are, first of all, when we're making a decision as a team and there's kind of consensus amongst the core team. But within Pynk, what we're building is a decentralized finance platform. And actually, we say that our team are our Pynksters around the world. So we're crowd powered. So we have a crowd in 160 countries, and we don't see our team just as us entrepreneurs, bashing away in an office in London. Actually, we have 10,000 people in our team, and our best decisions are when they come directly from our crowd. So it's all about co-creation for us at Pynk. We want Pynk to be shaped by our community. Mm-hmm. And when we make a decision that is not in congruence with what the crowd wants, we know it's a bad decision because they tell us, and we know we've made a mistake. But we're constantly feeding and reading our crowd for what they want us to do next. And when we do that, in a way that's aligned with their incentives, that's when we make our best decisions. And that's when the company grows and gets to the next stage.
Oh, nice. Why do you think there have been so many failed IPOs recently? Like Uber, WeWork, etc.
Yeah, well, I mean, the WeWork example is a really interesting one, isn't it? And to be honest, I think it's a real shame. I think it's a shame because it gives tech startup a bad name. Well, first of all, let me clarify, is WeWork really a tech company? I'm not sure that it is. It's a company that hires office space. And, in their paper, in their IPO paper, they mentioned the word tech something like 1,700 times. I can't remember what the number was, but a lot of times, because they're just trying to drive that perception of being a tech unicorn when I don't really think they're a tech company. But it's really embarrassing for, tech companies to have messed up on such a grand scale. And I think it just shows the lack of common sense sometimes. But, common sense has prevailed, and that IPO hasn't happened, obviously. And I think what's great about the SoftBank, who are the lead investors in WeWork, is they've pulled in some really commercially focused CEOs to turn that company around. And actually, they've reverted back to some earlier plans, which were less ambitious or more grounded.
Yeah.
So, but I do think it's a shame when you see these sort of things in the press, because it gives the whole sector a bad name. And I think there is an easy danger for companies to rely on the fact they say they're going to be the next unicorn and forget that they actually have to build a robust commercial model. So here at Pynk, whilst we talk a lot about our high return multiples and our future growth potential, we want to ground all of that in reality, and we're very focused on getting a commercially viable model in the next 12 months. And that's the first point. Once you start making money and start building businesses that make sense, then the investment will come. And sometimes people do it the other way. They say, let's get the investment first, and then we'll turn that into a business that makes sense. That's back to fun. So I think it's important to get those fundamentals right in the first place.
Which is one life-changing book that you've read?
Okay, so I've read quite a few life-changing books, but most recently I read Homo Deus, which is the sequel to Sapiens, and it talks about what the future of humans will become. And if you work in tech, it's quite interesting because it's quite clear that the rate of change is exponential, and there's going to come a point in time where human evolution accelerates in a non-natural way. One of the ways that might happen, which Elon Musk talks a lot about, is this kind of human interface between data. And at the moment we access data via our mobile phone, and when that brain interface happens, then we'll be able to process and create data much more quickly around the world via the World Wide Web and between each other. So that will be a singularity in that we will effectively evolve into almost kind of cyborg status, and then that's quite inspirational at the moment to think in that way. And there's a lot of talk as well in medtech about CRISPR technology, which is influencing your own DNA and your own chromosome. And again, that represents a singularity in evolution terms, because people have the ability to change their DNA and become what they want to become. So all of these things are very exciting. So I find it very inspirational, and I think a lot of people are scared by these things. But I think it depends.
I was going to say it sounds quite intimidating. Yeah.
It does, but the human race is incredibly innovative, and if you're an optimist and you believe that tech can be used for good, then why not be excited about it? And I think it's an incredibly exciting time to be alive.
Yeah.
But then my children's generation, it's going to be even more exciting for them. So we're just on the cusp of that now. But I'd love to see where we are in 50 years' time. So yeah, I think books like that really I find inspirational because it's a glimpse into the future.
Yeah,
and right now the hype is about blockchain and AI, but in 20 years' time it's going to be about something else even more exciting. So yeah, exciting times ahead.
Yeah.